Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today is January 1st, 2025. And of course, we cannot let you without the Wasteless World Talks. And this is why Kevin is here. And maybe Bill will join us. Let's see. And we will do exactly the same as we did in the last 2 years. We will take a term and try to find out what does it mean. And the term today is profusion. And of course, my first question is all the time the same, Kevin. So if you close your eyes and you hear the term profusion, what came first to your mind?
Well, as it's New Year's Day, there is in Denmark a profusion of hangovers. So for me, profusion means an abundance, or in this case, an overabundance of something. And on a day like today, when the country is so quiet, it can only mean one thing, and that's people are still waking up after partying late into the night.
It is interesting. And what is even more interesting that when I asked last year for the term profusion, and I did on Google Translate, it delivered two answers. One was the too much of everything, but the second was shortage of everything.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And what was even more interesting, today I checked again, same source, Google Translate, and it delivered only one answer.
Which was an overabundance, I guess.
Exactly. So I went to Webster dictionary and Oxford dictionary and dive a little deeper. And in the past, really, this term has been used for both.
That's really interesting. I actually always mix it up with proliferation because the two are fairly similar in meaning. So I guess these days with some things, there's a proliferation of profusion.
There is a reason. I don't know if you will remember, but we talk about profusion already. Not as a main topic, but we touch it in several times because my aim is to build so-called Profusion Academy, in which people like you, Bill, and all the Onichemos and all the other people will be the teachers and at the time the students at the same time. So there will be no this discrepancy between the teacher and student. All the time, both will grow at the same time. And it's one of my aims, and I will open it this year. And this is why I would like to talk about it because it is a very important and I think very interesting. The question is if there will be not such a silence like it is today in Denmark.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The one thing I've been thinking about, actually, when we started talking about profusion was the profusion of untruth. And you can call it misinformation, you could call it untruth, you could call it lies, whatever you want. But there is a profusion of this. It seems to be the thing which is in more abundance than anything else at the moment.
Have you ever heard the name KEKIUS Maximus?
No.
You will hear it from today on. Because Elon Musk renamed himself on Twitter and he used this term. And generally, I don't know if he knows what does it mean in Latin. In Latin, it means big cake.
Really? I'm sure he knows what it means, but you have to wonder why.
He changed it today. So maybe it was the result of the celebration of New Year. I'm not sure. Not sure.
Yeah, I guess you have to ask, is he a big cake or the big cake? In his own mind, I imagine it's the latter.
It's quite interesting because in 2025, do you feel that we will face the profusion of everything or the shortage of many things?
I think we will have a profusion of the things we don't want and a lack of the things that we need. And I think it's been the same for the last 30 years.
But there is a way out of it. It's just to find out where it's enough.
Yes, yes. I heard yesterday really interesting definition of what the truth is. Because we have so much argument about what is true, what is not true. And until we agree on what truth is itself, and it was this idea that truth is a belief that exists, or it's a thing that exists, even after we stop believing in it.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
And really, really interesting. Yeah. And it's not we're saying that the truth won't go away.
What I am not sure if I mentioned it last week, but what I find out that the truth is there every time is the truth first before the lie.
Yeah. Yeah. There has to be. It can't work the other way around, that a lie generates truth, you would hope. But yeah, truth comes first, and truth is eternal. It will last, whether we believe in it or not.
And that's interesting because it's all the time. It's inside of us, you know. It's inside of nature. It's just you touch it because it's true. If there will be a lie, you cannot touch it. So everything is so closely connected. And I like the definition that even if we stop talking about it, truth will be there. It will not disappear. And it is only about the understanding.
Yeah, and the belief. I mean, we can all be tricked into believing things that are not true, but they are just simply not true, whereas things that are true won't ever go away.
What is unfortunate is that with the development of AI and technologies and so on, there are more tools to pretend the truth to exist in a way which the people or the owners would like to present it, because you make such a realistic videos and pictures and everything, which you will look at. And if you are not aware of the fact and you do not have this ability to recognize, you will say, wow, in a few months ago, I noticed for the first time short videos about the giant people from ancient times building pyramids and really giants and so on. And it looks so realistic. And in the meantime, it's even more realistic. So, and what is interesting, the first thought is not that it is a fake because at that time there has been no cameras, but the question is, has these people be really so big?
Yeah. Have you heard of this thing? I only heard of it during the Christmas break. Have you ever heard of the long year?
No.
This is really, if it's true, it's amazing. There's this new theory that, this part's not a theory, this is a fact, that most stars are at least binary stars. It's less than 50% of stars are single stars. And we always believe that our sun is a single star. But now there's a new theory been put forward that it is a binary. It has a twin. And this twin is it's a dead star. So it's a brown dwarf. So it's very small and very dense and doesn't give off much light. And it's on a 22,000 year cycle. So every 20,000 years, they cross close to each other and then they part again. And the interesting thing is this, the first time it explains why most of the planets are not on a vertical axis when they spin, but they're tilted. And the cause of that mathematically is explained by having this second binary star. And this is such a fundamental change to the way we perceive everything about our planet, our solar system, how we see everything. It's really fantastic.
What I have noticed is that the scientists confirm that the North Pole has moved. And
Yeah.
it moved significantly, so this is why they speak about it. In the other years, it moved just for a few centimeters, but just now it was really significant. I think kilometers even, I don't know, but they relocate. But what I was wondering about, that nobody spoke about the South Pole.
Yeah, it must be. They do switch, apparently. So north becomes south, south becomes north. Which, if you're a migratory bird, it's not a good thing.
You will be at least very surprised after you arrive to the destination.
Yep, yes. It won't look as familiar as it has done in the past.
Was in the theory mentioned where the last 22,000 years has been there?
Yeah, there was. They came to their closest point 12,000 years ago.
12,000 years ago.
It'll be another 10,000 years before it's at its closest again, and then it will come not inside our solar system, but very close to it.
So that will be at the time when the Elonians will already be living on Mars.
Yeah, yeah. They've got the atmosphere working, the tidal system. Yeah, the great cake will be having monuments built in his name.
You know, I would appreciate it if he will lead the people on the Mars. It will be great, you know, because he said in the one of the last speech of the last year, he said that he would like to make the trip to Mars affordable for everyone. But at the beginning, it will be affordable only for the rich ones. So why not to move all together? You know, they will have a planet, they will have everything. I
think that society won't last very long. You know, the rich can't exist without poor people to do all the dirty jobs. How on earth are they going to cope living on a planet with only rich people? They will need an underclass, a lower class, to be able to survive because they don't do much work by themselves.
You know what will be the first lesson in the Profusion Academy?
What's that?
You have to define what is enough. Everyone has to define what is enough.
That's a good idea. I remember one of the companies I worked in, we were around 35 people. And the boss always said, you know, we should be 37, ideally, but it's better to be slightly under than slightly over. And I think that's a great definition of enough.
It is. It is. Unfortunately, so many are rated only by the achievement above the level which is there. So, but I think that this definition will be quite crucial for everyone, because if you do not understand, if you cannot answer this question, how do you want to change? How do you want to change the behavior and everything? So, quite interesting, quite interesting.
I was reading also, if I can remember it now, this idea of human intelligence. And it was something like, if you think of the average human intelligence, that's fairly low. But that's just the average. So we're not the smartest species on the planet. And I think it's good that we remember that. I think it's really encouraging when you look at these statistics.
I don't know whether you have seen in last few days, there show up a video how ants and humans move a big element of the shape of double T. So here is T and on the other side is T as well. One is bigger, but the second is, and they move it through a hole into another room, let's say. Of course, the ant has a smaller one, but they have one. And on the other was big number of people moving a bigger one. Who make it faster?
I would imagine the ants.
They did. They did. But the question is again, was it fake? I don't know. It was just a video with small dots comparing. I cannot say, but I do believe they will be faster.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way it's interesting because they do it without thinking about it,
And
whereas we have to. Yeah, for them there's a way to do it. For us, we have to find a way to do it. Whereas I think they're just much more practical. You know, it's a problem that requires a practical solution.
And that's
nature is fairly pragmatic.
That's exactly what we did, or not us, not two of us, but our forefathers did in the past. They has to be practical. They don't have two tries to build a pyramid or to build a house. They have only one. If they fail, they are dead. So simple it was. We have right now a lot of tools which, unfortunately, does not encourage us to be so practical. With every single tool, we are more and more unpractical.
Yeah, because I think with every generation, we become less practical and more theoretical. You know, I think, you know, my father's generation, most of them learned a trade. So my father was an engineer, you know, and doing practical things was at least half the kids in the school would do something practical. Some would do hand laboring, and then less than 50% would go into higher education, academic education. Whereas these days, I don't think the statistics are anywhere near that, especially for practical skills, hand skills.
And the Japanese start again from the very young age to implement the practical education in the schools.
Actually, I heard something also with talking to Anna in Russia, in Moscow, and she was saying that the Russian government is encouraging people not to go to university, but to take up skilled education instead.
I think that there is a very important step towards that. And this is the acknowledgement of the society that a manual worker is not worse than an academic title. But, you know, I have it for 11 years, my own experience. I go on the stage in a boiler suit, and the people don't notice me if they don't know me. They think I'm coming there to repair something until I start to speak.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting, you know, when I write through the today, just before we connected, I commented on one video on YouTube generally, and I said, thank you for sharing. That was my only comment. And somebody came to me and said, why do you say thank you? Is it common you say thank you to your electricity provider or so? And I thought about this question, and I wrote him, you know, for me it's common to thanks, even to the people who clean the streets, because they do frequently more than the politicians do. I will not thanks to the people who don't do anything except something for themselves. But it let me think. And I think that really the society has to acknowledge that. Unfortunately, in my country, because of the communist time and so on, there has been times when the manual worker was more than the academic worker. And it brings us back to the, oh, you are communist. But that's not true. So we have to line up this understanding, I think, not with the term of communist or capitalist, but with the term of human and understanding of that, I think.
But you can see with Western society, we've moved all of our unskilled and low-skilled jobs, a lot of them out of the country. We've actually exported our kids' futures, at least half our children who could be doing these jobs. We've exported them to China, places, and that makes no sense at all.
And the question is, China accepted, of course, because they can boost up the economy. They produce cheap and sell huge quantities. But right now, China is becoming more and more automized, robotics, and so on. So if you see, just before we join again, I saw a video of a food delivery in a big apartment house. So the guy does not go to the third floor. No, there was a robot. He placed it in the robot, and then the robot drive with a delivery with the lift and deliver it. And that's exactly the point. So they are right now same fast as they did adopted our work, they cut it out. And it will be much worse than they expect because they are very dependent on the electricity itself. You know, unfortunately, before the Christmas day happened this Magdeburg driver killing.
Yeah.
And it was just one guy. Just before we joined, today was in US somewhere, drive someone, I don't know where, in Texas, I don't know, killing 10. But can you imagine, this is done by humans. But every smart car, whether EV or filled with chips, is being or can be managed by someone else, not the driver. When these cars start to play crazy, that will be, and what is interesting, in the US, I think, was the proposal by Donald Trump that the self-driving cars are not responsible for accidents. Something like that he said just before Christmas, you know, and it's dream for those who own it.
Yeah, and for those who make it, who are his friends. So you won't be able to sue if you have an accident because you're hit with a car which is robot driven.
We are on the edge.
It's crazy. I saw. I don't know if you've seen it. There's an American professor. I can't remember his name. He did a talk a few weeks ago at Stanford University explaining. He's a physicist professor, and he was explaining in the simplest terms possible that battery cars won't happen because physically we don't have the electricity, we don't have the transformers, we don't have the rare earth, we don't have enough of the materials, we don't have the factories, we don't have what it takes to make them in the quantities that the European Union has mandated and that I think 7 or 8 states in America have mandated. It simply will never happen. It's a huge mistake and a big political con. And it's so reassuring to hear somebody say in practical terms, we cannot do this, it's impossible. There's not enough resources on the planet.
And generally, as I said for a long, long time, it doesn't matter which engine or which fuel the car has. If we use it efficiently, there will be enough cars without producing any single more. If we use it the same old way, means very, very inefficient. There will be never enough. The same with power, the same with many others. So it's not about creating more. And here we are at the profusion moment. It's not about doing more. It's about understanding enough and controlled degrowth is the solution.
Yeah.
Which means not scarcity.
The most efficient, energy efficient form of transportation is railways. And I think, at least in Europe, the railway network it covers remarkable amount of area. Whereas in the US and Russia, they simply don't have the infrastructure, the rail infrastructure. And so their drives for electric cars are misguided, and they don't have a vision of how it should be done. But and I saw another interesting thing. You know, when the government tries to mandate taste and mandate what you will do, it never works. I mean, the European Union can say from now until the cows come home, drive an electric car, but people don't want to drive electric cars. The ones who do have bought them. And there's this interesting thing in America. They have such a big backlog of unsold trucks. And there's 2 reasons they're unsold. First of all, because the electric trucks cost a fortune. And the second is, and this is no offense to anybody in Mexico, but the the big car manufacturers have outsourced their manufacturing to Mexico. And you cannot persuade an American that a Mexican truck is built to the same standards as an American one. They simply can't get into their head. And so they won't buy.
And the same was in East Europe. In the time of communism, it was said only the East European and Russian cars are the safe one. You know, Rada, Zhiguli, you know, all of them, Skoda at the time. But everybody wants to have the Western car. But it was, for us, it was, first of all, too expensive. Second, it was inaccessible. And if you have it, you will be for sure targeted by many police and by many, simple by many. Our first president, Václav Havel at the time, he bought a Mercedes, old Mercedes. And he did it. He knows he will be targeted, but he has it. So it was quite interesting. He has support from the West at the time already. But you are right. And generally, if you speak about the railway, it is interesting to look, for example, at China, how fast they build up the railway network. Within 20 years, they have bigger density of railways than the Europe generally. And India is trying to cope right now, which is on my, from my perspective of logistician, is the right one. But there is one issue why the railway is not being used so frequently by for the logistics, for the transportation of cargo and so on. You know, only the Czech price list for Czech railways has 150 pages.
Wow.
And that's exactly, if you look right now, if you look at Denmark at the post office, I don't know, do you remember how much cost a postmark or post stamp when you have been young? Do you remember that?
I think it was 2 English pennies.
And how much is it today?
I think in England it's £1.50, so 150 pennies, something like that.
In my country, it was 0.5 Czech crown when I was a boy. Today is 45 crowns, 800 times more than before. The service is worse. But that's exactly because the price list and everything is so complicated that nobody understands. So we simply don't use it anymore. And the same is with the rail. I try to use it. There is a great project in Germany. They start to use a tram, street train, tram. They use it for cargo delivery, for parcel delivery.
Really? That's a good idea.
Because they use only one part, have a very simple made trolley, which is fast loaded, fast unloaded. And what can you have better? You have rails, you know exactly the timetable. It's the dream, which I'm speaking about for 10 years and nobody listening. And the Chinese, what is even more interesting, back when they started to build this triangle of the speed trains, they face up the issue, not enough passengers. And of course, it was expensive, and you know, it's like going into the plane. You are checked and safety check and so on. But they did a very clever thing. They converted part of the wagons into cargo wagons. So simple and so clever.
Yeah. In Denmark, I still really enjoy the S trains, like the inner city train. Every 4th carriage is for bicycles.
That's great. And we introduce it in the summer in some destinations. You know why? You know why? It's we really have to look at the things from a different perspective. And this is why, as I said, would like to have this profusion pushing it, the idea pushing it through. Because if you say you are doing audits of wasting, nobody would like to have it. Nobody will let you in a factory. But if you say profusion, that sounds different. Maybe we will win.
Yes. I was just thinking in Copenhagen, we have electrical bicycles that you can rent, but you can't rent scooters anymore. They've all been banished. And it was really interesting. I was reading why, and they could have been a lot of reasons. They're unsafe, they're too fast, but Copenhagen came up with the truth. And they just said, listen, they make the city look ugly.
And you are speaking about the kick scooters.
Yeah.
Everything.
So, yeah, we don't have them.
Exactly the same situation in every city generally, because the rules has not been kept that you should park them in some special location and so on. They are kept everywhere. And from my perspective of a unicycle rider, I have to say one interesting thing, and I said it for 10 years, that a kick scooter and unicycle, they are, let's say, similar effective. But everybody, almost everybody, when you see a kick scooter, in your brain is going following sentence, I can ride a kick scooter. If you see a unicycle in the brain, oh, it has only one wheel. Yeah. I have to be careful. And that's right. And that was exactly the reason why it becomes so dangerous, because the brain does not stop you, does not block you. It lets you ride. And the latest one can go 160 kilometers per hour. They are really, really super fast. And even the very cheapest one, they can go 20, 25 with ease.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have in Copenhagen, every street almost has a cycle lane. And so, the danger there is that these things stand to go as fast as bicycles, but they're silent and they're unpredictable. So it just isn't a good mix.
I'm just now thinking whether I know any unicycle rider in Denmark. Probably not.
I've never seen one.
Probably not. I'm not sure if it's legal, to be honest, because in UK, for example, there is a strong community. There was even the biggest experts and a really expert, which all recommend to, if you have a question, you contacted Ian. But it was illegal. Despite that, he was able to collect a lot of money for charity, riding 2,000 miles in a short time or something like that. So it was quite interesting. But right now it's legal only on a private property. But still, riders there. Germany, illegal. And in Germany is you have to register it as a small motorcycle, as a Mofa generally. And what was interesting, you should register it as a small motorcycle, but the law does not recognize a vehicle with one wheel and no pedals.
No. So, yeah, you can't.
And there was only in Bayern, they find a way how to match it generally. But it was the only state, and I think it's banned even there. But again, I have seen yesterday, I have seen a graveyard of new cars from China. Again, there is a lot of, at this time, electric cars with the batteries on the car, which is one of the largest wasting of what you can do, because even if the batteries are not strong enough to power the car, they are fine to power smaller devices or be a backup battery or whatever. And there stands thousands of cars with a battery plugged in.
Can they be recycled? Batteries? No, I know that solar energy panels cannot be recycled either.
Can be. That's generally, it's not true that they cannot. I don't say it's easy, but right now it's technology. It's applied in Europe, US, even in China. They can spread it. What is interesting about the solar module generally, you have a, let's say, glass layer, then you have the cells, and again, a glass layer or plastic or whatever. And generally, what degrades is the glass, but it's not the cell. So if you will be able to break it up, take the cell up, you have a completely new cell.
Okay.
But because there is a, let's call it glue or connection material, which doesn't make it possible, so they crash it. They can crash it, separate apart, and generally the recycling is becoming quite a big business globally. But from my perspective, you know, the producers give a warranty of 20, even 30 years for the modules. And they are switched after 10 or 15. From my perspective, will you throw away, if you buy a bread, you cut one slice, will you throw in a garbage the rest? And that's exactly what they are asking. So they are not considering upcycling. And just now there are great projects from Germany, Africa, different locations, where they take the used solar module and use it as a fence. And that's great because it still will generate a power. It will serve as a fence at the same time. Why not to use it?
Yeah. But these car batteries, I mean, we don't have enough resources to make the number of cars that the European Union and the Americans want. But I mean, how on earth are we going to dispose of those things afterwards? We're just going to dump them in Africa, I guess, like we do with all the car tires.
Again, the same processes exist for batteries as well. So battery recycling exists already. They are quite efficient, let's call it so. But on the other hand, once again, why should I recycle if I can upcycle? Yeah. But the upcycling is somewhere far behind. Of course, it's included in the Industry 5.0, but it's far away from the understanding of the people who would like to make money on doing more. And here we are back on a Profusion, and we have only 2 minutes left.
That went quickly.
No, new year, new quick setup, I will say.
Yeah, and a profusion of new ideas.
Profusion of new ideas. That's, I think you just named the lesson which you will educate.
That's a deal. I would love to do that.
I don't think it will take long because, you know, the Profusion Academy has no walls. It has no windows. It has no doors. It is everywhere. And this is why we will deliver the change.
And it will never come from ordinary education because that is geared to a totally different objective.
And that's why we are here, Kevin. That's why we are already delivering lessons for 2 years together with Bill. This is why everybody can go back and take it out and listen and learn and then ask the questions, not just deliver the answers. So let me wish you, have a great year, 2025. Have a nice time for your waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, and let us lead the Profusion Academy towards wasteless world.
That sounds really good.
See you next week at the same time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.